there's this saying that pictures are worth 1,000 words. And if you look at a map, it usually is a bunch of different layers, a bunch of different pictures that have been brought together. So that map itself is probably worth tens of thousands of words if that saying were exactly true. And so I think as part of thinking about accessibility in maps, we really have to think about what is the story and what is the purpose of the map that we're telling. And we have to kind of think about how we're conveying that message because it's not so simple when you're trying to make it for someone who can't see the map. So we've got the ADA Title II amended rule. What that means is we have to get to this standard called WCAG 2.1 level AA, which we're going to talk about. We're going to start with this thing called POUR, which is a nice acronym that's kind of silly, but it gives us a framework for how to think about accessibility and compliance with accessibility. So we have this POUR principle. The first one is perceivable. So the way you can think about perceivable is we all have senses. We can see, we can hear, we can smell, we can taste, we can feel. Some of us have different numbers of senses than others. And if you have a different number of senses, we still want you to experience the same data and the same information as other people. Okay, so that's kind of the characterization of perceivable. Operable means, can I work it? Can I work this application using only my keyboard? If I can't see where my mouse is on the screen, then I have to be able to do it with a keyboard. So can I do that? Understandable. Can I get that information out of the map without seeing it? So that might be like a tabular view in addition to a map view. And robust. Does it survive other technologies like a screen reader, which, as we will see here in a little bit, is actually quite challenging to do. Okay, so let's dive into perceivable. Now, a lot of you, actually, let me just ask, how many of you have ever taken one of the tools that tells you about accessible compliance and run it on a web app or a web map or something like that? Nobody? Well, a couple of people? Okay, so there are tools you can run that will tell you how close you are to WCAG compliance. Okay, now, how close you are is kind of tough. So what we see is that basically perceivable is what those automated tests can tell you. Okay, so they're going to tell you if you're missing alt text, right? If you're missing a button or a map alt text that would describe what that button is for, which I know sounds odd, sounds like why would I need that, but it'll make sense why you need that. Missing ARIA labels. ARIA labels are kind of an advanced version of alt text. If I'm building a custom web application, I can put a short description and a long description. And I can attach that. And it makes it much nicer for a screen reader because that long description can have structure, and I can skip around it like a table of contents instead of listening to minutes of audio about one thing. Color contrast. One of the most common forms of an altered senses is color blindness. Okay, so we'll look at a tool later that can help us look at maps in color blindness mode. Color-only indicators. So that is if I provide symbology for layers, say I have some lines and some polygons, right? Interesting thing about polygons is polygons have lines around the outside, right? In colorblind, if I'm colorblind, I might not be able to distinguish that polygon has a fill if it's just a color, right? And so I need to sometimes put like hatch marks. I might make lines dashed and solid, or I might put hashing inside the polygon so that it is visually distinctive in addition to just color. Okay? And then missing captions or transcripts. So if I have a video that plays, I need to have captions on the video, but I also need to have captions attached to the video with a special transcript file. If you just upload something to YouTube, YouTube helps you take care of this so you don't have to deal with it as much. But even the automated transcripts in YouTube, if you've ever looked at them, are a little sometimes, right? So if you really want it to be accurate, you got to make sure to read that transcript yourself and upload it with that video. Okay, so that's perceivable. this takes us to the big question, the big definition inside this legal structure is called equivalent purpose. So this is, I want to make sure that my web mapping application is equivalent no matter who's looking at it. So if you're blind or you're deaf, you need to be able to get the same value out of that web application as you do if you can see or hear. This is where it gets tough, because earlier I showed you those maps and then I read you that paragraph for that map. And that paragraph might be equivalent purpose if I can't zoom or pan that map. But if I can move that map around and interact with it, is that one paragraph really enough to be truly equivalent? I don't know. That's kind of a tough question, right? It depends on the purpose of the application, I think. So maps themselves are very visually dense. We often publish maps with many layers with different colors and symbols. Sometimes we're even trying to tell more than one story in one map. And when we do that, we can confuse the purpose of the map. And that makes it even harder to have an equivalent purpose use. Okay? So we have to think about all of these things. One of the things at dymaptic that we did, and I'll show you this later, but in no way is this a sales pitch. I built a tool that will take a web map and will write the paragraphs of text that are the alternative description of that map. And what was interesting is when I started doing this, I thought, oh, the alt text for a map is going to be like a couple of sentences, right? It's more like 4 minutes of audio. Now, if you're used to listening and perceiving your world through sound and not through vision, you probably listen to that at like 2, 3, even 4x speed sometimes. So it's not really 4 minutes of audio. They also, most screen reader users will skip around to find the pieces of information that are useful. So enabling all of those things are really important when you're trying to get to equivalent use and equivalent purpose for a mapping application. Okay? The thing is to remember is we're usually trying to convey a lot of information in a map. And we want folks who can't see the map to also get that information. Okay, so that takes us to the second letter in POR, operable. So operable is about being able to move around an application using a screen reader or a keyboard. So the most simple version of this is making sure that your tab order is correct, so that when you click on a mapping application and you hit tab, it goes to the next thing correctly, and that order makes sense. Okay? Non-focusable interactive elements. So one of the things that can cause a problem is you have a button on the screen and it's not in the tab order. Like you can click on it with the mouse, but if it's not in the tab order, then you can't get to it any other way. And that can be very frustrating if that button is like referenced, or now an entire bit of functionality for an application is not usable if you're trying to use a keyboard to navigate it. Improper tab order we talked about. Keyboard traps. This is a weird one. I did not know what keyboard traps were when I started this accessibility journey. That's when you do something like you tab into a pop-up and then you can't get out. Right, so you hit tab and you just go in a circle. You go back and you can't exit this space without clicking with your mouse. Okay, I think I can show that. I think I have an example of that, so we'll kind of see what that looks like. Hover-only interactions are really tough. So if you hover over a point and some text appears on the screen, unless you've gone through a lot of work, the screen reader is not going to see that at all. And they're probably not going to be able to do that anyway, because most screen reader users don't use a mouse to navigate at all. And then missing skip navigation links. So this is about being able to group content on a page and jump from section to section instead of having to go through every single little layer by hitting tab, right? I want to be able to jump at the high level first and then dive into a thing. Okay. One of the things you can do in navigation is you can define headings. So that if you've ever written HTML, that's like H1, H2, H3, H4, right? But what they really do is they provide an outline structure. Just like when you make an outline, you have level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and level 4. That's what those headings are actually for. And so using them that way means that the data on your page is organized that way. And then people navigating with a screen reader can navigate from H1 to H2 or the next H2 without going to the paragraph of content underneath it, right? It makes sense. Okay, so understandable. So this means that so at this point, I can navigate my application, right? I have set up some keyboard capabilities so I can move around it, but can I understand it if I'm navigating that way? So this is things that are simple, like having a form that is labeled. So like if it's asking for your first name, is it labeled for your first name, right? And is it connected to the label so that when the screen reader reads first name, I'm already in the text box where I can just start typing my name, right? It's kind of the little things like that. Invalid error states. So this is an interesting one. If I need to type an email address into a box and I fail to put an @ sign in it, for example, is the only indicator a red line around that box? Because the screen reader's not going to see that. And so now you just have a user who's frustrated because they don't know, they're trying to submit a form and it's not working. You have to have text appear on the screen also to explain what happened so that the screen reader can see it. And actually, you have to also use an area announce label, which will actually cause the screen reader to notice that something has changed on the screen and immediately read that piece of information. Unexpected context changes. So that's so like if I'm doing a search, for example, I need to be able to get to the search results, but I don't want to immediately appear in the search results, right? That is an unexpected context change. If I was typing into a box and I pressed enter to activate the search, I should now tab to continue to get those results, right? And that's another usability thing is the screen is going to change and my tab order has to react to that. Inconsistent navigation, so same type of stuff, right? You have to have tabs orders that are correct, and they have to be maintained when things shift underneath you. And then unclear instructions. This is one of my favorite things. How many of you have ever made a map with a time slider in it? Cool. Did anybody ever label what that time slider was in the application?
Yeah, time slider 1.
Time slider 1, there we go. There we go, right? So it's a kind of a funny joke, but also I think we all relate to that problem. It would be nice if it just said permit submission date on top of that time slider, right? Now, a lot of times we just don't think about that. It's like, okay, well, you'll figure it out, right? You can click and you can see, but if you don't connect those things, then it becomes very hard to understand from a screen reader's perspective. Same thing for like a pop-up, right? If I put object ID in my pop-up, well, one, that doesn't mean anything to any of us either, okay? But to a screen reader user, it's just like object ID. What is that? And then it reads them a number, right? Just like if I give you a table in a pop-up and I'm just going field name, value, field name, value. That's exactly what the screen reader is going to read. Field 1, value 1. Field 2, value 2. Field 3, value 3. That's not a good experience for anybody, whether you're using a screen reader or not, right? Make an HTML pop-up that has a nice description and a good layout that explains what's going on, right? That's a much better experience for someone who is both a screen reader user and not. And it's really easy to make those now because you can use just the ArcGIS Arcade Assistant to build those pop-ups for you very quickly inside ArcGIS. Okay, and then robust. So this is basically about making sure that the application survives being used as it changes, okay? So things that can affect this are if you're building an application yourself, if you have invalid HTML, screen readers will kind of freak out and start reading weird characters to the person. If you have missing labels, it's much harder for you to get around and navigate. if you create labels and then you don't fill them out, that's even worse, because now there's like this stop with a blank, and it's even more confusing. Status messages we kind of talked about a little bit for filling out a form, right? And then improper hierarchy, those H1s, those H2s, those H3s. So all of those kinds of things still apply even as the application is morphing underneath the user. As things are changing, you still want to have the correct headings applied so you can continue to skip around. Okay, so we're going to now look at some sample applications, and we're gonna go on an adventure is what we're gonna do, and you all are gonna come along with me. Some of it's gonna be annoying. We'll get there. Okay, so inside Experience Builder, step 1, at the very bottom is this little thing that says A11Y. It's pronounced ally. It's very cute. There in the word accessibility, there are 11 letters between the A and the Y. So A11Y, ally, accessibility. That's what that stands for. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to turn both of these on. That's like bare minimum what I got to do. What that does is it sets my tab order so that I can move through the application in a way that matches the hierarchy that I build in Experience Builder. Okay? And 2, it enables on every widget that allows it, it gives me this accessibility settings right here. So now on any widget that supports it, I can put a label that describes what that is. Now, one problem here is that this is an ARIA label, not an ARIA description. So what I put here is going to get read by the screen reader whether or not the user wants it or not. So I want to keep it tight. I don't want to put 4 minutes of audio in here that describe my map. But on the other hand, there's also not really a better place to put it if I don't change the layout of my Experience Builder quite a bit. So this is kind of your fallback for having some kind of description for that map. Okay. I also have the option to do this enable skip to. Now I don't want to enable skip to on everything, but on things like a map that might be the primary purpose of my application, I want the user to be able to skip straight to it. And so what enable skip to gives me is basically a marker that the screen reader is going to see that allows me to jump straight to it, and I can skip all of the front matter, right? Headings and pictures and stuff at the top. Okay? So that's kind of the bare minimum. Now, if you're doing custom experience builders and you're building custom experience builder widgets, these accessibility settings are not automatic. You have to provide support for that accessibility bit inside your custom widget. Okay, so you have to map that. Okay, another thing inside Experience Builder, if you go and you look at the theme and you customize your theme, when you look at the color choices down here, so this is my background is white right now, and my text is this almost black color. If I go and I make it white, you see it's telling me that I have insufficient color contrast. So right here inside Experience Builder, it's telling me whether or not I'm going to pass that color blindness check with all of my colors in the app. When you're designing a web map, if you're using color ramps, I think at this point, every color ramp in ArcGIS Online that Esri provides by default is already colorblind friendly. Now, if you mix and match them, you might have to be careful. If you mix a blue one and a green one, that might be really hard to see. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. Okay? So in Experience Builder, you got a few things you can do, right? You enable those ally settings, you put in the alt text, you put skip to on important things, and you check your contrast ratios. Okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to look at, this is a dashboard made in Esri's dashboard tool. And what I want to do is, what I want to do is demonstrate a screen reader to all of you. So what I actually want everybody to do is close their eyes for a minute. And I know that's weird. It's like the only lecture you've ever been in where somebody asks you to close your eyes. But I want you to experience this for a minute. I'm going to turn on the screen reader, I apologize if it's too loud or whatever. I'll try to be hot on the audio here, on the volume. It's going to be annoying. I'm just going to say that now.
Voiceover on Chrome. National Burger Day. Park Room. You are currently on the text field. Header. Banner. You are currently playing. Image. Learn more about dynamic menu. Button. Menu. Scrollable list of top burger restaurants. This map shows the continental United States, southern Canada, and northern Mexico at a national scale, displaying locations marked with hamburger symbols. The map covers the entire contiguous U.S. from the Pacific to Atlantic coasts, with major cities labeled throughout. At this continent-level view, the map identifies approximately 36 locations, with a higher concentration of markers in the eastern half of the United States. Key trends and patterns. The hamburger markers show a clear east-west distribution pattern, with notably higher density in the eastern United States compared to the western states. The markers are primarily concentrated near major metropolitan areas, particularly forming a dense cluster in the northeast corridor from Washington, D.C. to New York, and throughout the Midwest around Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. The western states show more sparse distribution, with markers appearing primarily in major cities like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Denver. This pattern suggests urban-focused coverage.
Okay, so I'm going to pause the audio there and not make us listen to the whole description. And let's say what I want to know is, well, which one is it in Iowa? What's the best burger joint in Iowa? So we're going to try to do this by navigating with our keyboard and the screen reader here. Okay, so we're on the map. So here we go.
Scrollable list of top burger restaurants by state, each showing the restaurant name. This match. Scrollable list of top burger restaurants by state, each showing the restaurant name and a photo. Select a This map shows the continental United States. Scrollable list of search, edit text, blend, article, WA, Iowa. Iowa Burger Fiend. Get directions. Row, table, 1 column, 1 row.
Did everybody kind of notice how, as I'm reading that, I'm like bouncing around, right? So I'm bouncing around from bit to bit. That's every time I press a navigation button on the keyboard, it's starting to read the next thing, right? So very much how my eyes jump around, except it's a little bit harder. It's hard. I spent all week basically trying to go cold turkey and only using a screen reader to get this good at it, okay? And I'm terrible at it. So it's quite hard to use. That said, I highly recommend that everyone does it. Like, pick an application and try to survive using it using a screen reader. Like, take your mouse. My partner in crime, Amara, who usually does these with me, she says to pick up your mouse and throw it across the room. I don't think you need to actually literally do that, but try to not use the mouse is the thing, right? And the one piece of information that I'll give you is make sure you know what the escape sequence is to turn off the goofy thing. Because at some point you're going to be like, oh my God, I don't know what to do, and it's just yelling at me, and I have to stop. And if you don't know the keyboard shortcut to get out of the screen reader, well, you can go get the mouse and you can be clicking around, Googling, trying to figure out what this keyboard shortcut is, but it's going to be reading it to you and yelling at you the whole time. So that's a dashboard. One of the interesting things about this is every time I open this and I try it, I learn something new. Inside this list here, these pictures actually don't have alt text. They're attachments. I actually don't know how to fix that. They're attachments, excuse me. They're attachments coming from a feature service. And they don't have alt text with them. And we really need unique alt text for each record, right? Because each one of these is a different picture. I mean, yeah, they're all pictures of a burger, but how boring would it be to sit here and hear it go, a picture of a burger, a picture of a burger, a picture of a burger, right? Nobody wants that, okay? You want to like describe the melty cheese and the lettuce, right? Come on now, right? Like pictures of food are really important. The other one that I learned is get directions. The alt text for every one of these get directions button is, guess what? Get directions. So it just says get directions, get directions, get directions as you're like going through this. It's kind of tough, right? So it really should be something else, like the title of the restaurant, get directions to, or something else, right? So you really got to think about what is that flow like when you're building an app like this. Okay, story maps. Story maps are, they have kind of built-in accessibility stuff that's actually pretty nice. The nice thing about story maps is that they're kind of designed to explain content from top to bottom. And so if you build that content well, then it's going to work for a screen reader or a non-screen reader user. The catch is the map and images. So the first thing is if we have images, actually let me just show you this. So if you go to Insights on Story Map, one of the things that you'll find is there's an accessibility thing here, and it will tell you, this image doesn't have alt text. Okay, so if I go to the settings on this image, then I can go to the accessibility tab, and I have alt text, little tiny box. Okay, now in Esri's defense, everybody's alt text box is little tiny. Now, if I can't see that image, is the 10 words that I can fit in that box really going to replace it? Not really. I mean, let's be honest. There are a lot of AI tools that can help you write these, but they all kind of need help. Like if I hit Esri's suggest here, it's going to give me a group of children and an adult posed together in a classroom, some making peace signs with desks, educational posters, and classroom supplies visible in the background. Okay, that's not bad. But what I would challenge you is what in that image is important? Why did I put that image in this story map? Because if I'm going to put an image there, it needs a purpose. And if it has a purpose, then I should be able to describe in some detail what that purpose was in the alt text. Okay? So usually when you include an image in text, there are two things that you get. You get alt text, which should describe the image, and then you get a caption. And the caption is like a short phrase that might maybe pull it together. What I often do, like I have a newsletter that I publish every week, and when I put images in it, I write alt text and I try to tie it together. Right? I put that image in line in my text somewhere, and so I try to make that alt text read through. So that if I was going through the text and I got to an image and I got the alt text, that it would kind of make sense what I'm saying there, but I'm saying it relative to the image. Okay, so you got to figure out what that means for you in your application, but generally speaking, don't just throw images in there, right? That's the thing. That's the biggest lesson I learned out of this is like, if I'm going to put an image in, it needs to have a purpose, and if I can't articulate that purpose in alt text, then I probably don't need that image. There is no help when I do alt text for a map. So I'm left to my own devices here. That's why I built a tool that does that, because this is hard to write alt text for a map. But again, you need to think about this. This map in the story map, is it meant to be navigated, or is it going to automatically be zoomed to the thing that I want to show? And it could be explorative, but it's mostly just explaining the thing to me. I got to think about what that means when I'm putting a map in a story map and what the alt text is for that map. Okay, so same problem as with an image, but you have the additional problem that technically the person can alter the map and explore it in some way, and the alt text never changes. Okay, so something to think about. Okay, so how do I build a process to do this in a good way? So if I have existing applications, the first thing is I'm going to run an audit tool. I'm going to show you a couple. And what they're going to do is they're going to tell me, like, what is the bare minimum number of things that I need to fix to help get there. It is not going to help me make a good experience necessarily, but it will get me to the bare minimum. So that's step one, is run that audit tool. Step 2 is manual testing. That's getting out a screen reader and trying it and seeing what the experience is and learning at least a handful of keyboard shortcuts other than tab and shift tab to go back and forth and experiencing it yourself. Some organizations have relationships with the blind or deaf communities, and you can get someone else to test it for you and give you feedback, which is also incredibly useful because as soon as you let somebody else do it, you learn a lot, right? That's true of all applications. As soon as you let someone else press the buttons on your application, you're like, why would you push that button first, right? Everybody's experienced that. Keyboard-only navigation, so again, put your mouse aside, make sure that you can navigate it using tab and shift tab at the very minimum. Alt text, things like that, make sure that they're high quality, make sure it's more than just one sentence, make sure that it flows and makes sense when you have a screen reader going from section to section to section. And then I think, and I've seen other people start to do this, is document where you think the compliance is lacking. Again, this is the kind of thing where you want to check with your legal counsel, but what we're seeing some organizations do is document what they can't make fully compliant yet, and perhaps provide an alternative like a PDF that downloads that is all of the information in tabular format that the map has, right? So you're making something, even though it's not necessarily good. So some tools. The first one is Andy. This is a free tool. I think it's actually made by the Social Security Administration, which is weird, but it's quite simple to use, and you can very quickly get a sense of what is wrong and what would a screen reader look at on your application. Okay, and there's another one that I'm going to show also that I think is a little bit easier to use. That's a Chrome extension. Screen readers, every laptop has one built in. There's VoiceOver on Macs. There's Narrator on Windows. That's a good first try. Just go for that. Most screen reader users pay for a much better tool than those. So that JAWS is the paid version of that. It's fairly expensive, but a lot of government agencies have a license or two of that, so you can usually find a person who has that and can test things. And then NVDA is a free tool that is kind of in between as far as features. It's better than the built-in ones, but not quite as feature-rich as JAWS is. WebAIM is another tool that you can use to look at things, and then Accessible Map Agent is our tool that will generate accessible alt text for a map and give you the paragraphs of text that describe it. Okay, so let's look at a few examples before we try to do some of this ourselves. So here is what I would probably classify as a bad map. Okay. I made this. Apparently, I like the firefly symbology. Okay, so I went with, I was trying to depict where level 2 and level 3 electric car chargers are. I had a friend who did a long road trip in an EV recently, and we were trying to understand, is this possible? And so this is kind of an interesting map, but it's quite bad. What makes it worse is if we go to our colorblind checker over here, which is this little eyeball that, there it goes. Ooh, that was weird. It lets me test for different types of color blindness. So if I click through these, it changes my browser page so that I can see what it looks like if I have that type of color blindness. It's like, okay, so if I'm normal, I can see the difference between that red and blue. If I go here, okay, I can still tell. It's muted, but I can tell. Well, now I can't tell anything anymore. Now I just see some weird light and dark colored dots. So this type of symbology is terrible for this, right? I needed either colors that are separate, or I need different shapes so that when the colors fall down, I can still tell what's on this map. All right, so let's talk about what we can do to experience builders specifically. So here is an experience builder, very simple one that I made last night for this demo. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, and we're going to look at the preview. Okay, so this is very simple. It's fairly dumb. It doesn't do anything really sophisticated here, okay? But what we want to do is we're going to go over to our extensions, and there's this thing called the Wave Evaluation Tool. And this one's free. I actually recommend it as a good first stop. So first off, we can see that just by using Experience Builder, we actually have a really high score, 9.6 out of 10. So like, we're already doing pretty good. But I kind of think that where this stuff is today, you kind of got to get all the way to 10. It's not, stopping at 9.6 isn't really good enough because it means there's kind of some glaring things. So the first is we've got a low contrast thing here. So when we click on this, you see it blinks on the screen. That's our title. So that red on green is pretty terrible as far as context goes. I did know that going in. And then just before we switch and we make a change so we can see it go away, I'm going to look at this next one here. This next one is no heading structure. So that's kind of weird. I have this title up here. Why would there be no heading structure? It's because when I made this, it's text format paragraph. Right? I just made the text bigger so it looked like a title, but it isn't one. So I'm going to just pick heading 1, and we'll make this a little smaller so that it fits in my box. Make it even smaller. What is going on? Oh, I have a return in here. Okay, well, whatever, you get the point. So we go back and we're going to change that to heading 1, and over here we see we have our color contrast warning. So I totally even ignored the warning that Experience Builder was giving me when I did this. So we'll come in here and let's pick maybe something like that. Does that work? Nope, that's still not good. Maybe if I make it, there we go. So if I head way more towards that white band there, then I get enough contrast. I get enough color contrast here. So now, if I go look at this, yes. If I go look at this, so you can see there's my title has a much better color situation. And now when I go to this, my contrast is gone and I'm down to only 2 alerts. So the next alert that I have on here is no page regions. Page regions you don't have to have. So page regions define different groups of things on the application so that I can skip in the screen reader from group to group to group, or region to region to region. If my application is simple, where there is just a very simple flow like this one, I don't have to have regions. Okay? And then I also have a redundant link, so that's an interesting problem. The cool thing about this tool is when you click on the little eye, it'll actually tell you what's important about this and what guideline it's related to. So you can actually go read it yourself and see, why is this flag, like what is this important? Does it apply to my application? So you can make your own decisions about what applies here and what doesn't. Okay. If I go to this order tab, you can see it's actually showing me what my tab order is. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, and 4 off the edge of the screen over there to get to that search button. And then 5 is the link to Esri that comes with the map. I can't turn that off, it's just part of the map. So I can very quickly see what my tab order is. Does it make sense? Yeah, it does. Going from menu, other links, and into the map makes sense. The other thing I could do though is I could go back and I could actually enable my accessibility here, and I could turn on skip to on that map, and that'll give me over here, if I go to structure, you can see I have my H1, right, where I have my IO workshop demo. If I refresh this, maybe I didn't save it. If I save it and then I refresh it, and then I go and I open this tool up and I go to structure, you can see I have a skip to now. And you see it's at the very top, right? So that means that in my screen reader, that's the first thing I'm going to hit if I know how to use it. I will admit that when I use it, it's not always the first thing I hit. Sometimes I hit something else first because I don't know how to do it very well. But an experienced screen reader user will find that skip to map immediately and be able to jump over all of this other content and get straight to it. Right, so and I could define that skip to in any of my widgets, so I could have a text block or something like that. that I'm going to skip or jump to get there. Okay? So that's kind of the basics of this wave tool in Experience Builder. The other tool that is kind of useful like that wave tool is Andy. Andy isn't even a Chrome extension. It's actually like a bookmarklet that you can open on any page, but you can't open it on an Experience Builder because Esri has all of the code injection things very, very tight. So it tries to inject some external JavaScript in order to run. So you can't actually use Andy on most Esri out-of-the-box things because of that code injection protection. So you have to use a Chrome extension. So I have this very simple application. It doesn't even have a real map on it because I just wanted to have different examples of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the screen reader and we're going to try to navigate it. And I want you to, don't close your eyes. I mean, you can if you want to, but watch the screen because you'll see what's selected and you'll see how that changes over time as we enhance the application to be more compliant. Because right now, if we go and we were to run our evaluation tool on it, we are not doing very good. Okay, we got a lot of problems. Amazingly, we have a 4 already. Like when I actually built this, I was trying to do everything wrong. Like I was just really trying to do it wrong. But there are a lot of problems in this application. So I'm going to get rid of that. And we're going to go on an adventure.
Voiceover on Chrome. Iowa GIS Portal. Accessibility Demo. Part of Group IA Demo Google Chrome. Christopher. Window. Has keyboard focus. You are currently on a groove inside of web content. To exit this web area, press Control, Option, Shift, up arrow.
So what that means is I'm inside, what it means by group is it means I'm inside that header bar right there. So if I tab,
welcome to the Iowa Geographic Information.
I'm now on that, there we go. I'm now on that next part, okay? Now, I hit tab, and so what that did is it moved to the next kind of interactive component. You notice it skipped the images, okay? So let's see if I can make it do this here.
Iowa GIS Portal, groove. You are Iowa GIS Portal. You are welcome to the Iowa GIS image. You are currently on an image inside of web content. To begin interacting with the
I'm on an image. So again, so now my question is, well, do I need that image? Or should I have done something to make that image better? Okay, so let's continue just to experience this because there's some other fun things in here that are quite funny, I think.
Welcome to the Iowa Home button. You are currently on the button, plus button, U minus button, trigram for heaven button, U straight ruler button, U printer button, U search groove, search for a location, edit text, blank, one password layers, groove, check, checkbox, U check, checkbox, uncheck, checkbox, you are information, groove.
Okay, it's kind of rough, right? Like it's not great. And then one other thing that we'll try here is this.
Application region. You are currently
so button application region, right? So this is my fake map, and so it has no alt text. It just sees it as a canvas, as a blank area, and it best it can do is application. So before we fix headings, I was going to demonstrate that there is a special keyboard shortcut to navigate headings. So we'll turn it back on here. Yep.
Voiceover on welcome to the Iowa GIS Portal, groove. You are currently on a groove inside of web content.
So you can't tell because you can't see the keyboard, but I'm just pressing the H button, which should take me to the next heading, and it's not doing anything because there are no headings in this application at the moment. If I turn it off, if we turn it off and we inspect this, we see that it's just a plain old div, right? So it's not actually a heading. So if we fix it, we can see now it's a heading, okay? And I think if we look at the info banner, Oh no, that one stayed a span, okay. But so I think the search is now also has, yeah, so the search became an H2. So what that means is I can now jump from that header down to search using just the keyboard shortcut. Okay, so that's why that's important. Button labels, I'm going to turn on. I'm just going to turn on a couple and then we'll do the screen reader so you can see. So I turn on button labels. So we'll turn it back on.
Welcome to home button. Zoom in button. You are currently.
Okay, so zoom in. That's a lot better than plus, right? Okay, so.
Zoom out button. Toggle layer panel button. Measure distance button. Print map button. You are print voiceover.
Right, so already better, right? Because now, by listening, I know what those buttons are for, right? Maybe I could have guessed that the ruler was measure, like, okay, but just saying that it is that makes it a lot clearer, right? It makes a lot more sense. So search label and map label are going to make that next section better. So now if we come down here,
voice search for a location, search for a location, edit text.
okay,
Password menu is heading check on heading link, backbone state park. Click for details button. Interactive map showing Iowa state parks and county boundaries. Green markers indicate state parks across Iowa.
So now I have that alt text for the whole map, right? And okay, yeah, it's giving me a lot of, right, my map doesn't have any of those things on it. It's because I didn't want to have to reload the Esri map constantly as I was doing this. So we're already getting better, right? Now we can navigate this. We have a pop-up, and the pop-up is being kind of read to us. So when that activated, it said Backbone State Park, right? So those are connected now inside the application, which means that from the screen reader perspective, when I activate it, I'm having the same experience, okay? And then
image, heading, layer names, fix, layers, level 1, toggle Iowa State Parks layer, check toggle county boundaries layer, check box, toggle flood zones 2024 layer, uncheck, check box.
Right, so now the checkbox itself is telling us what it's for. So before, I will admit that I did skip over one thing. Before, when it was just going checkbox, checkbox, if I had used an additional keyboard shortcut, I could have gotten to that label where it says Iowa State Parks. But I don't know from the screen reader, if I can't see it, I can't tell if that's actually attached to the checkbox or not. The way to guarantee that is by putting the label on the checkbox so that the screen reader reads it as toggle flood zones 2024 layer unchecked, right? So now I know exactly what this does and its current state. Now, does turning a layer on or off actually make sense if I can't see the map? Not really. So what I really need is I need to be able to turn it on, and then I need to be able to explore that data in some other way, right? I didn't do that here, but I need to have like a table or some other way that lets me interact with that data. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it back off.
Toggle plus F5 button. Voiceover off.
Okay, so there's some simple things, contrast, okay? So that's simple. Notice that you probably didn't see anything change on the map when I checked that off, right, on the application. It's because the contrast is generally quite subtle, right? The colors that you use still work. You just have to adjust exactly which tones you're using. Image alt text, so that fixes these so that over here we now have alt text on that image. So if I right click on it and I inspect it, we can see that it now has a label, location pin icon decorative. So I'm actually telling the user that this doesn't do anything, it's just a decoration, they can skip it, right? And a lot of screen reader users, I think, actually do skip those. And there's actually other ARIA tags you can use to even tell something that it is just fluff. So if you have like a picture in the background that's just blurry and it's not actually, it's just part of the visual appearance, you can tag that as such so that they don't know they're missing anything. It's like, oh no, this is just here to make it in the background. Yeah. Okay, so then link text, this is an important one, and I think there are things that happen, and we all do this. I am very guilty of this. If I come down here, I'm just going to demonstrate it.
Voice of information, level 1. Link, click here. You are currently on the link.
Okay, so link, click here. What does that mean, right? And I think there are two ways that we all end up doing this. One is putting a link at the end of a sentence saying click here, or putting in the giant HTML string. And what does the screen reader do? It goes https://www. Right? No one wants that. Like, that's not useful. It's also arguably not very useful to us that can see either, having this giant big long string in there. So the right thing to do,
link text, fix, edit information link, view the full Iowa GIS data catalog. You are currently on the link, inside of F5 button, voiceover off.
Right, so I am describing that link. Or even better is if I have a paragraph of text and I want to put a link in there, put it on the words that it applies to. Like if I do this in my newsletter, if I am referencing an article and I introduce the article as I'll say something like, oh, according to the register, blah, 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 AI security, I will make that text the link. And then the screen reader will happily read it and annotate that it's a link. And if the person is interested, then they can open the link and follow it. And if they're not, then they can allow the screen reader to just keep reading. Right? So, and that also, it is more intuitive to me as a seeing person too, right? Because now that link is just in the paragraph. I don't have to have extra text. I don't have to have a big long URL. It's just right there. And if I want the URL, I can right click on it and I can copy it. It's not that big a deal. Okay. Focus indicators. So right now,
Voiceover on information, level 1. You are currently on the heading toggle heading search heading level.
That's what I have for focus indicators right now. If I turn this on,
Focus indicators, fix, search, level 1. Heading level 2, search.
See the black line right there? That's actually brought by my screen reader. The yellow line is now brought by the application. So it used to be by default in all web applications that selected color was there, but we didn't like it. So by default now most browsers turn it off. But you can turn it back on just with some HTML. So when you bring that back on,
search for heading toggle top heading link backbone state card.
It's actually
backbone state.
Sorry. It's really hard to see, but it actually makes a big difference on things like a map or where you have an interactive and something that is interactive, because you get a highlight on the thing that you're focused on. And if you're not blind but you're low vision, that can make a big difference, because you might have the screen blown way up to high magnification, and just having that color focus on what's focused on the screen can make a big difference, right? Because now you know where to look on your screen. So that can help quite a bit. Landmarks and skip link. And one thing that I want to note is that when I'm clicking those, the screen reader is announcing them to me that I did it. That's another ARIA label that you can use in an interactive application, so that when something happens in the background, like say a message comes in, right? And normally there would be some kind of UI that would pop up and be like, oh, you have a new message from so-and-so. You can announce that using an ARIA label, so that as the screen reader is going, it'll pause and it'll say, new message. And then the user can decide, what do I do with that, right? Do I want to go read that new message, or is that just a piece of information that I want to ignore and have the screen reader keep reading? Just like we do in Teams, when a message comes up, you see the little bubble come up, and you're like, oh, I have a message, but I'm not going to go look at it, right? You get that same kind of capability with the ARIA announce tool. So now I have landmarks and I have skip links. So now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to try.
Banner. You are end of banner. You welcome to the Iowa heading level 1. End of. Welcome to the end of banner. You are heading level 1, Iowa GIS portal. You are currently on the heading level 1. Heading level 1, Iowa reset button. Heading
Nope,
level
can't do it.
1, Iowa GIS portal, banner.
There we go.
Banner. You are currently on a banner, inside of web content. To add welcome to the Iowa GIS home button. Welcome heading level 1, Iowa GIS portal, and Iowa GIS.
Oh, I got the logo.
Corn emoji, image.
Yeah, see, this is really hard, right? Like, I'm up here sweating trying to do this, and you're either laughing or bored out of your minds, you know, right? Because like, it's really hard to follow somebody else doing this, because it's going at the speed that my brain is operating as I'm trying to interpret this, right? So you can imagine that if I was used to this technology and I had it reading at 2 or 3x or 4x speed, right? That's why I would be using headphones, because otherwise this would be absolutely bananas for you to try to keep up with what I was doing, right? What I was trying to get to is the landmark. So that basically each header gets its own section, and I can navigate by section. So I can go from that top banner to the next banner to the toolbar to the layer list to the map. And I can move between those. And I am just not good enough to remember which of the, I only know like four shortcuts, I'm sorry. But that's what landmarks do, is it gives you those regions, right? And we talked about navigating those regions. So when I have a more complex application, I want to be able to get through those regions and navigate them that way. If I turn this off now,
F5, voiceover off.
If I turn this off, and I go back now that all of these are fixed, and I rerun my wave tool, the only one I have left is actually this one low contrast thing, and it's the close button on my pop-up. And it's because I chose a gray that is too close to white. So all I would really need to do is make that a little bit darker, and that would solve my last error here. But yeah, I thought I had fixed that last night, but I didn't. So that's a good example. So you can see that's what it ends up looking like. Okay. The main thing to do is you have to try these. You have to run the accessibility tools. You have to go in and fix all of the things, and then you kind of got to look at the tab order and just try it, because it is, and be prepared to just laugh at yourself, because it's very frustrating the first several hours of using a screen reader. The paid ones are probably a little bit easier, but it takes a lot of memory to remember all the keyboard shortcuts, and they're very different than what you're used to. Yeah, there's like tab and shift tab, and those are very important, but there's also control option up, control option shift up, control option shift down, and left and right in various combinations. So plus H to get around headings. So there's a bunch of different combinations. So just kind of be prepared to experience it. So the tests give you a good background. They help you get through that perceivable, the P and poor, but they don't help you get through the O and the U and the R, right? You have to kind of test it and experience it yourself to get through that.